What's up guys, Nick here for Daily Vape TV. Today I'm going to be reviewing the Sigelei 30 watt. Now this is my first mod review, and I do want to give a big shout out to Chris from E-Cigs who lent this to me for the purpose of review, so thanks a lot Chris. Alright, so basically what I'll do for you guys today is give you a quick overview of the Sigelei 30 watt, then I'll break it down and get down to the nice close-up view so you can see exactly what it looks like. And then finally I'll vape on it and give you my pros and cons. First impressions of this device: it is a 30 watt device and it ranges from 7 to 30 watts as well as 3.0 to 8.5 volts and you can use a 0.5 to 3.0 ohm coil on it. The price range of this device is $110 to $150 depending on where you're buying it from. It uses the same menu system as the 722 mod, and it's basically the same beefed up version of the original Legend. As you can see here, they look pretty much the same as opposed to a few minor details, but the good stuff is on the inside. Now this uses the SX300 chip, which is a 30 watt chip. I believe it's a Chinese made chip, but it performs, so far for me, it's been performing really quite well. It gives me a very consistent hit, and I've been using it for the most part at 30 watts. The height of this device is 5.5 inches tall, and it is 7/8 of an inch wide. And right here my setup is about 7.5 inches tall, and if I put my K-Fun on there, I'm looking at about 9 inches tall, which can be a little bit much for some people. Honestly, I'm a big tube mod style guy, so this really fits well for me. I like the size and weight of it. I also received the 26650 adapter tube for it, which is kind of a nice touch. You can add a little bit of battery life to that, but we'll get into that in a little bit. So let's get down to the nitty-gritty, take it all apart, and we'll show you the details. So first off, I just want to mention that this is 510 and Ego threaded with the use of this little thread hider here. And personally, I think that's almost an unnecessary feature, because anyone that's using this device at 30 watts is most likely using a rebuildable atomizer or a K-Fun or something like that, and they're not going to really need that. In my opinion, I would get rid of that for the next version. But there's also this adjustable pin inside here for your center post of your 510 connection, which can be a little bit of a pain. I did have to fiddle with it to get my Russian 91% to work on there, but it is a nice feature to include for people that are using different atomizers on here. You do get the opportunity to fiddle with it a little bit rather than not being able to. Personally, I would have added a spring-loaded pin in there just to make it a little bit easier on people, but that's me. Now the next thing I want to point out is the OLED screen. So as you can see, when you fire the button up, it does light up pretty bright. It gives you a readout of the watts you're vaping at, the ohms, volts you're vaping at, and the voltage of your battery. So I like that screen, really bright and easy to see. So that makes it a really good addition to this mod. With the menu system on this one, like I said, it's the same as the 722. 3 clicks gives it a lock, 3-click unlock, 5-click menu, and you could just tilt it to adjust the different functions on there. Now the accelerometer in here will adjust your wattage if it's tilted left or right. Let's go ahead and tilt it. And it starts off relatively slow and works its way up until it goes really fast, but it does stop at 30 watts, which is nice because sometimes on my Pro Vari or something I'll go too far and I'll end up back at 2.9 volts, which is a pain. This mod, you don't have to worry about that. Now the menu system, pretty easy to understand. It's system on and off, the wattage, and exit. So you can just boop, gone, and you're back to the main screen. Now I do like the gravity sensing feature for me personally, but that's only because I have a 722 and an original Legend, so I'm already used to the system itself. So people that are new to this kind of mod might be a little bit shocked at how you actually use this, but overall I think it's a pretty nice feature. Another thing about the screen is it will show if you have a short, it'll show if you have low battery, and it will say check atomizer or low resistance if you build a coil that's a little bit too low. So the tube itself is made out of stainless steel, and I think the construction is really well made. My only gripe is this button. It does wiggle around a little bit, and I don't know if you can hear it. It's a little rattly, you know. The battery itself doesn't rattle at all, and I'll attribute that to the bottom adjustable pin. The battery's pretty tight in there. It does have an adjustable pin rather than a spring as in the earlier versions of the Legend. And this is an 18650 mod, so it does hold one 18650 battery, or using the 26650 adapter tube, one 26650 battery. So as you can see here, there's the top pin that is not adjustable. There we go. And here's your top of your battery connection. Another thing I noticed is if I have my bottom battery cap all the way tightened in before I put it on top of, or before I put it on the mod itself, it does not line up the logo with the screen, and that led me to believe that there might be a little gap in between. So when I backed it out a little bit and the logo lined up and I tightened my battery cap back down, I noticed there's a tiny little gap. Now hopefully you can see that there is a little gap there. That kind of does bother me because this is a flat top Sony VTC5 battery, and as far as I know, there's no other batteries that are like smaller than a flat top battery, and I wonder if anyone else has this issue as well, because I'd like to know. Leave it in the comments. Down to the bottom battery cap. It is adjustable, and it does have a copper pin. One thing I noticed when I was first using this device is that the battery dip, or the voltage dip, when I was firing it at 30 watts, it got to be so bad where I would put in a fresh battery and instantly it would say check battery as soon as I fired it up. And that's because this pin was dirty when I received it. So all I did was brush it up a little bit and got it clean, and now it's hitting just as good as new. Now this pin is adjustable, so if you did have a smaller battery in there, you could adjust it up a little bit. So here is the Sigelei 30 watt with the 26650 tube attached. Now as you can see here, the finish is a little bit different on this. This is more of a lightly brushed stainless, where this is almost a sandblasted stainless. And the difference is quite noticeable. I'm not sure if this tube was intended for this device originally, but either way it does work on it. So let's slap an atomizer on there and show you one problem I've been having. As I mentioned before with the battery dip with the 18650 battery, the battery dip, or voltage dip I should say, and this one is just as bad, and there's nothing really more I can do. I've cleaned up every contact in here, and as you can see it's going from almost fully charged at 4.15 down to 3.0, and to me that's a little troublesome because that means you could easily kill a battery on here, so that kind of worries me. A few things I do like about this tube though is that the vent holes, there's plenty of venting area for your battery in case you get one that leaks. Now the top pin on the battery connection here is all brass, and it is adjustable, and the threads on this are really smooth. I've never had an issue with it. I'm using an EFES 26650 3500 milliamp hour battery, so that shouldn't be really the problem. I'm thinking it's the connections and just how much goes in through these few connections here. The internal resistance of the battery could also be a factor. I haven't really tested these 26650s too much, but personally I enjoy this mod more with the 18650 battery than the 26650. So that about wraps up the overview of the look and feel of this device. Let's go back to the main screen and have a few vapes and give you the pros and cons. Alright, so you guys just got an up close and personal look at the Sigelei 30 watt. Now we're going to vape it and talk about the pros and the cons. First, let's have a vape. So right now I'm vaping a 0.8 ohm twisted 28 gauge coil at 30 watts, and it is just chucking vapor. I had the same coil on my 722 mod at 22 watts, and it just does not perform anywhere near this level. Now this is the most vapor I've ever gotten out of a 0.8 ohm coil, so cheers to you on that, Sigelei. Good job. Alright, so the pros and the cons, quick breakdown. Pro, the price. For the price, this is definitely one of the most affordable, authentic 30 watt mods with a decent chip in there. This mod is also good for beginner rebuilders because it's a regulated mod, so that means it'll warn you about any low resistance atomizer or anything like that that's going to make it not function properly. So basically you're very well protected against anything. Another pro for me is the look and feel of it. It feels great. I like the stainless construction, and it has a really neat sandblasted kind of look. The logo is pretty neat too. It has like almost a rainbow kind of finish to it if you look at it in the right light. It's also a tube style mod, which is great for me because I've always been a big fan of tube mods as opposed to box mods, which I could never really get a good feel for them. But now this thing is not going to collect fingerprints. This sandblasted finish to it really just gives it an overall good look and feel. When all is said and done, you're not going to have a whole bunch of fingerprints all over. And final pro is the battery life. I'm using an 18650 VTC5 2600 milliamp battery, and this thing could last me probably about 6 to 7 hours of constant vaping at 30 watts, which is really impressive. I also used a VTC4 in it, and I got similar results, but I would get about 2 to 3 hours more out of the VTC5 than I would the VTC4. Now on to the cons. My first con is right at the 510 connection. Not a huge fan of the adjustable pin rather than a floating pin. I would have really liked to see a floating pin in there. Another con for me would have to be the gap in the battery. It just bothers me. I really like a sleek overall look and feel, and it looks great other than this little gap right here. Everything that I've slapped on here fits nice and flush and even, sits perfectly, except this little gap at the bottom just bugs the heck out of me. Now when I'm using the 26650 battery extension tube, I do get a fairly weak connection between the mod and the extension tube, so that I think plays a big part in the voltage drop of the battery. Usually I'll get almost 3 or 4 hours out of a 26650 as opposed to the 6 to 7 I get out of an 18650, so that I think is a major flaw. Like I said, I'm not really sure if the 26650 tube is designed for this mod, but it does fit on it, so I think they should really rework that, redesign it, and come up with one that works flawlessly with this mod. When I'm using it at a lower wattage, it does perform a lot better. So if I'm using it at like 15 watts or something like that, I can get about 9 or 10 hours out of it, but what's the point of having a huge battery tube on a 30 watt mod without being able to use it at 30 watts? Now another thing up at the top cap is this ego threading with the thread hider. Like I said before, I don't think anyone that's really using this mod to its fullest potential is ever going to use an ego thread on here. Pretty much everyone's going to be using their K-Fun or their rebuildable atomizer. So I don't think those ego threads are necessary, and it gives it about 3/4 of an inch extra room at the top, which they could have really saved on overall height and a little bit of weight. So that I think ditch in the next version. The menu system to this, the tilt design and all that is kind of iffy for me. I enjoy it because I'm used to it, but others might be confused and kind of not be able to get their proper wattage that they're looking for, might accidentally shut it off, and then you have to wait like 10 seconds to boot it back up again, which can be a pain in the butt. But for me, it's not a con, but for others, I believe that could be a con, so I'm just going to add it to the list there. That about wraps it up for this video. Thank you for watching, guys. Definitely check this mod out if you get a chance. It's the Sigelei 30 watt. Don't forget to like, favorite, and subscribe, and as always, vape on.